Hey there, I'm Will Katz, and this is Precalculus 3.1.
Section 3.1 is all about the big three trig identities, and these are the big three. You already know this one, sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. So really the chapter is just introducing these two new ones here. Tangent squared plus 1 equals secant squared, and 1 plus cotangent squared equals cosecant squared. Now, there's really no way to get around it. You are going to have to memorize these. But the good news is, again, you already know this one, so you're really just memorizing two things. So just drill these until you know them by heart. Now, the cool thing is underneath each one of these are two more identities that are really just rearranging the terms, right? Like if we move tangent over to this side and we move secant over to that side, we get the second one, right? And if we switch the one with the secant, we get the third one. So if you just remember these big three, you can figure out the other two from there. Now the steps to doing these problems, it's pretty straightforward. What I actually recommend you do is, whether you're doing homework or it's a quiz or it's a test, just write these big three down at the very top of your page, right? Like when they hand you your test, just dump those on the top of the page. And then for each problem, take a look at the problem and then look at the identities and see if you can figure out which identity you're going to use. And if you don't see anything, like if nothing sticks out to you, when in doubt, you can always just convert everything to sine and cosine. So I will now do an example problem. We're going to do number 1 from the homework. So the way that we do these problems is you make the left side look exactly like the right side, or vice versa. So just looking at this problem, we got cosine squared x plus tangent squared x cosine squared x. So my thought is, hey, we can factor out a cosine squared. So let's go ahead and do that. So we go cosine squared x, 1 plus tan squared x equals 1. And right at this point, you should see this term right here, 1 plus tangent x. Look up here and see that and go, yep, we're going to use that. So we're going to substitute that in there to give us cosine squared x secant squared x. But the thing is, secant is defined as 1 over cosine. So we can just replace this secant term with cosine squared x over cosine squared x. And at this point, it's obvious that the left side is equal to the right side, so we're done. Now, let's say that you don't see this, that it doesn't occur to you to do to factor out a cosine squared. Well, we can always, when in doubt, convert everything to sine and cosine. So here's what that looks like. So again, going back up to here, we're going to convert everything to sine and cosine. So that's going to be cosine squared x plus sine squared x over cosine squared x times cosine squared x. And from here it becomes pretty straightforward. These just go ahead and cancel. And then we get cosine squared x plus sine squared x equals 1, which we know, thanks to the first identity, is true. So we're done. So those are a couple ways to solve number 1. Let's go ahead and do a more complicated one so you can see what that looks like. Okay, so looking at this one, again, what I recommend you do first is take a peek back at our trig identities to see if there's any one that seems to apply in this situation. So tan b plus cot b equals cosecant b over cos b. I don't really see anything that is obvious as far as a trig identity that we're going to use. So let's just head on back to this. So I don't really know how to proceed with this one, so I'm going to go to our good old fallback strategy, which is just convert everything to sine and cosine. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and find a common denominator here and convert this into one big fraction, because I don't really see anything else to do. So our common denominator is going to be sin b cos b. And that means we're going to have to multiply this by sin b, so that's going to be sine squared b, and this is going to be cosine squared b over sine b cosine b. Okay, so let's go ahead and combine those. So now we get sine squared b plus cosine squared b all over sine b cosine b. And wouldn't you know it, that is one of our trig identities. That's going to be equal to 1. So let's go ahead and convert that. So now we get 1 over sine b cosine b equals cosecant b over cosine b. Now here's the thing. Cosecant b is defined as 1 over sine b. So that's it. We're done. So this is a great example of how if you see something that looks kind of complicated, like looking at that off the top of my head, I have no idea how to do that. You can kind of just convert everything to sine and cosine, and a lot of the time it'll work out. That's kind of your fallback option in case you don't really know what else to do. Since that went kind of quickly, I'm gonna go ahead and do one more, just for fun, for funsies. So let's do number 12 because that looks kind of crazy. All right, that's a mess. Normally we're going to be working on the left side, but generally speaking, I think it's easier to take the side that's more complicated and try to simplify it rather than to take the simpler side and try to make it more complicated. So we're going to work on the right side here. Right off the bat, we actually know that tangent and cotangent are reciprocal functions. So we can actually just go ahead and cancel those because again, tangent theta is 1 over cotangent, right? So so those will just cancel right off the bat, which is pretty awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and get working on that. Cosine squared theta equals cosecant theta minus sine theta all over cosecant theta. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and split up this fraction because I would love to cancel these cosecants. So let's go ahead and do that. Cos squared theta equals cosecant theta over cosecant theta minus sine theta over cosecant theta. So these cancel and become 1. And we'll take a look at this term. So cosecant theta is the same thing as 1 over sine. So cosecant theta is the same as 1 over sine theta. So we could rewrite this as cosine squared theta equals 1 minus sine theta times 1 over sine theta. So if we multiply by sine theta over sine theta, those will cancel, and we'll be left with cosine squared theta equals 1 minus sine squared theta. And as we know, this is one of our main trig identities. So we're good. That's it. So what we did here, just recognizing that these were reciprocal functions and that we can just go ahead and cancel them. And then I just went ahead and split up the fraction, canceled the cosecant, and then converted everything to sine and cosine, and it just worked out. So these problems can seem kind of daunting because there's a lot of stuff on the page, and it isn't always clear how to proceed. But you know, look at those trig identities, see if you can pick one that fits the situation, and when in doubt, just go ahead and convert everything to sine and cosine, and that should carry you. So anyway, this has been Will Katz with 3.1. And again, if this was helpful, go ahead and like and subscribe. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. And my contact info is in the comments or the description. And I'll see you guys next time.